The cold fluorescent lights of the clinic buzzed overhead, casting everything in that particular shade of sickly blue-white that made even healthy skin look pallid. I stared at the grainy black-and-white image in my hand, still struggling to process what it meant. A baby. My baby. A tiny bean-shaped cluster of cells that would become a person. "You're about 8 weeks along, Ms. Reynolds," the technician had said, her voice carrying the practiced neutrality of someone who delivered life-changing news every day. "Everything looks normal so far." Normal. What a useless word. Nothing about this situation was normal. I stepped out into the late September rain, the ultrasound printout tucked safely in the inner pocket of my coat, protected from the downpour that matched my mood. Manhattan glittered around me, 1,000 lights reflecting in puddles like scattered stars, beautiful and completely indifferent to my crisis. I pulled my thin jacket tighter around me, wishing I'd worn something warmer. The weather had turned suddenly, catching the city in that awkward transition between seasons. 3 weeks. That's how long ago Mark had disappeared. No calls, no texts, nothing. Just vanished after nearly a year together, leaving behind half-empty drawers in my apartment and a void of unanswered questions. And now this. A baby I never planned for with a man who was no longer there. The subway ride back to my apartment in Queens was a blur of noise and bodies, the familiar discomfort of rush hour providing a strange comfort. At least some things remained predictable. I mechanically checked my phone every few minutes, scrolling through our last text exchange. Nothing had changed, of course. His final message was still there. "Can't wait to see you tonight. Miss you." He never showed that night, or any night after. My tiny apartment greeted me with the same empty silence that had become my constant companion. 1 bedroom, a kitchenette, and a bathroom barely big enough to turn around in. But it was mine. Or at least it would be until the rent was due again. 3 more weeks. My job as an administrative assistant at a law firm barely covered the bills when I was on my own. With a baby coming, the math became impossible. I dropped my bag on the counter and collapsed onto my second-hand couch, the springs protesting beneath my weight. The ultrasound had been the last thing I wanted to do today, but my doctor had insisted after confirming the pregnancy test results. "Let's make sure everything's developing correctly," she'd said gently, probably seeing the panic in my eyes. My hand drifted unconsciously to my still flat stomach. There was nothing to feel yet, no physical sign of the life growing inside me. But knowing it was there changed everything. I needed to tell someone, not my parents. They'd barely spoken to me since I'd moved to New York against their wishes 3 years ago. Not my coworkers. Office gossip spread faster than a virus. But I needed to share this burden with someone before it crushed me. My best friend Jenna was traveling for work, somewhere in Europe with spotty reception. Still, she'd want to know. With trembling fingers, I pulled out my phone and took a photo of the ultrasound. I opened our message thread, the last exchange from 2 days ago sitting there. She'd sent me a blurry picture of the Eiffel Tower with the caption, "Wish you were here." I attached the ultrasound image and typed, "Wish you were here too. I could really use my best friend right now. I'm pregnant, Jen. Mark's gone. I don't know what to do." My thumb hovered over the send button for a long moment before I finally pressed it. The little whoosh sound as the message departed carried a strange finality with it. There. It was real now. I had told someone. I set my phone down and dragged myself to the shower, letting hot water cascade over me until my skin turned pink and my thoughts grew foggy with steam. When I emerged, wrapped in my threadbare towel, I heard my phone chime from the living room. That was fast. Maybe Jenna was awake despite the time difference. I padded across the cold floor, leaving damp footprints behind me, and picked up my phone. The notification made my heart stop. It wasn't from Jenna. It was from a number I didn't recognize, with a New York area code. But the preview showed 3 words that made no sense. Is it mine? Confused, I opened the message. And then I saw it. The ultrasound image I'd sent, but this wasn't Jenna's thread. Somehow, in my exhausted emotional state, I'd sent the most intimate, vulnerable message of my life to the wrong number. My face burned with embarrassment as I quickly typed, "I'm so sorry. Wrong number. Please ignore." The response came immediately. "Who is this?" I hesitated. Should I even respond? But something about the abruptness of the question made me feel I needed to provide closure to this awkward exchange. Just someone who made a mistake. Sorry to bother you. The 3 dots appeared, indicating the stranger was typing. They disappeared, then reappeared several times, as if they were writing and rewriting their response. Finally, "What's your name?" A chill ran down my spine. Something about the directness of the question felt invasive, demanding. I shouldn't answer. I knew I shouldn't. I'm sorry, but I don't give my name to strangers. Again, I apologize for the mix-up. Have a good night. I set the phone down, my heart racing for reasons I couldn't quite explain. Before I could even turn away, it chimed again. You texted Mark's old number. The room seemed to tilt around me. Mark's old number? That was impossible. I still had Mark saved in my contacts. Unless he'd changed his number. Unless the number I'd been texting for the past 3 weeks had never reached him at all. With shaking hands, I picked up the phone again. How do you know Mark? The response took longer this time, each second stretching painfully as I watched the typing indicator appear and disappear. We had business together. He owes me. My throat went dry. Mark was an investment banker, or so he'd claimed. We'd met at a coffee shop near the financial district, his expensive suit and confident smile a stark contrast to my bargain-rack dress and nervous demeanor. He'd been charming, attentive, generous. Too generous, perhaps. The gifts, the dinners at restaurants I could never afford, the weekend trips, all beyond what a mid-level banker should be able to afford. But I'd never questioned it. Never wanted to question it. What kind of business? I asked, though a voice in the back of my mind was screaming at me to stop, to block this number, to forget this conversation was happening, the kind people don't walk away from. My legs gave out beneath me, and I sank to the floor, the towel still wrapped around my damp body. Mark had been involved in something illegal. It was the only explanation that made sense of his sudden disappearance, of this cryptic exchange, of the subtle wrongness I'd sometimes sensed but pushed aside. I don't know where he is, I typed truthfully. He disappeared 3 weeks ago. I haven't heard from him since. The response was immediate. But you're carrying his child. It wasn't a question. The certainty in those words made my skin crawl. I don't know you, I wrote back, fear giving my words an edge. I'm not discussing my personal life with a stranger. Please don't contact me again. I moved to block the number, but before I could, another message appeared. You live at 1843 Astoria Boulevard, apartment 4B. You work at Hayes & Wilson Law Firm on 52nd Street. You leave your apartment at 7:15 every morning and stop at the corner cafe for a large vanilla latte. You've been alone since Mark left. You're scared, broke, and have no idea what you're going to do about that baby. Ice flooded my veins. They'd been watching me. For how long? Days? Weeks? As if reading my thoughts, the next message came. I know everything about you, Eliza Reynolds. And now I know about the baby too. My name. They knew my name. I should call the police. That was the rational response to being stalked, to receiving threatening messages. But something told me that whoever this was, they operated beyond the reach of ordinary law enforcement. What do you want from me? I managed to type, my fingers numb with fear. The answer came swiftly. Information. Mark stole something that belongs to me before he ran. $2 million and a flash drive with sensitive data. I want it back. I don't have any money or flash drive, I protested. I barely knew Mark, it seems. Whatever he took, he didn't give it to me. The typing indicator appeared again, disappeared, then reappeared. I held my breath. Maybe you don't know you have it. Maybe he hid it. Either way, we need to talk, in person. Terror seized me. Meet this person? This criminal who'd been stalking me? Who might be responsible for Mark's disappearance? I wasn't that stupid. No, I typed back firmly. I'm not meeting you. If you contact me again, I'll go to the police. I waited for the threatening response, for escalation. Instead, there was silence. 1 minute stretched into 5. Maybe they'd given up. Maybe my bluff had worked. I finally gathered the strength to stand, to move to my bedroom and put on pajamas, my mind racing with what to do next. I needed to call Jenna, to tell her what had happened. I needed to think about moving, changing my job, disappearing like Mark had. The sudden pounding at my door made me scream. "Ms. Reynolds?" A deep voice called through the thin wood. "We need you to come with us." I backed away from the door, looking frantically for a weapon, my phone, anything. "I've called the police," I lied, my voice breaking. "They're on their way." A laugh from the other side. "No, you haven't. Now please, open the door before we open it for you." "Who are you?" I demanded, grabbing a kitchen knife even as I recognized the futility of the gesture. "Mr. Castellano sent us to bring you to him. He's very interested in meeting the mother of his business partner's child, Castellano." The name meant nothing to me, but the authoritative way it was delivered told me it should. Whoever this man was, he clearly commanded respect. Or fear. "I'm not going anywhere with you," I insisted, though my voice trembled. "Ms. Reynolds." The voice became softer, almost gentle. "You can come willingly and be treated as a guest, or we can force the issue and treat you as a problem to be solved. Mr. Castellano prefers the former, but he's prepared for the latter." My options were disappearing by the second. I could feel the walls closing in, my carefully constructed life crumbling around me. Whatever Mark had been involved in, I was now caught in it too, along with my unborn child. "I need to get dressed," I said finally, defeat washing over me. "You have 3 minutes," came the reply. I moved on autopilot, pulling on jeans, a sweater, and boots. I grabbed my phone and keys, though I suspected neither would be much use to me where I was going. As I approached the door, my hand rested briefly on my stomach. "I'll protect you," I whispered to the tiny life inside me. A promise I had no idea how to keep. I opened the door to find 2 men in black suits, their broad shoulders filling my narrow hallway. Their faces were expressionless, professionally blank, but their eyes assessed me with cold efficiency. "Ms. Reynolds," the taller one nodded. "Mr. Castellano is waiting." As they escorted me downstairs and out to a black SUV with tinted windows, I caught sight of something on the roof of my building that hadn't been there before. The sleek, menacing silhouette of a helicopter, its blades slowly turning in the night air. The message on my phone suddenly made terrifying sense. "Come now!" he'd commanded. And now I was. The helicopter blades sliced through the night air with a rhythmic thump that vibrated in my chest. I sat rigidly on the leather seat, strapped in tightly between the 2 suited men who had collected me from my apartment. Neither had spoken since instructing me to put on the noise-canceling headphones that now cupped my ears, isolating me in a bubble of muffled sound and mounting dread. Through the window, I watched New York City transform beneath us. The familiar grid of streets and buildings shrank away as we rose higher, the city becoming a sprawling constellation of lights. I had never been in a helicopter before. Under different circumstances, I might have found the view breathtaking. Now, it only emphasized how quickly I was being carried away from everything familiar, everything safe. Where were they taking me? To this Castellano person, obviously. But where? And what would happen when we arrived? The questions circled in my mind like hungry wolves, each one more terrifying than the last. One of the men tapped my shoulder and pointed. Following his gesture, I saw we were approaching what appeared to be a large estate north of the city, situated on a cliff overlooking the Hudson River. A helipad glowed with perimeter lights on impeccably manicured grounds. Even from the air, the property radiated wealth and power. Old money wealth, the kind that didn't need to announce itself. The helicopter descended smoothly, the pilot expertly navigating the craft onto the illuminated circle. As the rotors began to slow, one of my escorts removed his headphones and gestured for me to do the same. "We've arrived, Ms. Reynolds," he said, his voice oddly formal. "Mr. Castellano is waiting in the main house." The other man unstrapped my harness and opened the door. The rush of cool air against my face carried the scent of pine trees and water. It was quieter here than in the city, the night filled with natural sounds instead of traffic and humanity. They led me along a stone path, lit by small ground lamps, toward a mansion that loomed against the starry sky. The architecture was classic, almost European, with ivy-climbing stone walls